Mission failed. All teams extract immediately. The order was broadcast at 4 a.m., with thick fog blanketing the sealed mountain zone completely. The entire squad had vanished from radar screens. Nobody was responding to repeated calls until a crackling transmission suddenly broke through the emergency frequency. Go 7, target down. Repeat, target down. The entire command station froze in complete disbelief. Go 7, but that person was reported missing in action. Who is still out there fighting, alone against impossible odds? Her name was Lena Varga, 34 years old, European descent, with dark brown hair, always pulled back in a tight bun at the base of her neck. Medium build, but deceptively strong, with the kind of fluid movement that spoke of years of specialized training. She worked as logistics support for the airborne division. Nobody considered her part of the assault team. Her job was supposed to be simple: supply ammunition, equipment, and medical supplies to Bravo 2 team during their classified mission in the Zero Mountain Range. Lena rarely spoke unless directly addressed. She'd once been a reconnaissance team leader, but after losing her entire squad during an unacknowledged mission, she'd requested a demotion to support roles. She preferred the background, preferred being overlooked. The soldiers around her called her Ghost Shadow, not because she was intimidating, but because nobody knew her history, and she had a habit of disappearing precisely when everyone else was settling in for rest periods. She moved through the base like smoke, present when needed, invisible when not, professional but unreachable. What they didn't know was that Lena carried equipment that wasn't standard issue for logistics personnel: a compact radio system that operated on frequencies that had been discontinued years earlier, weapons training that went far beyond what her current role required, and, most importantly, skills that she hoped she'd never need to use again. On the night of deployment, when the main team was ambushed by heavily armed separatist forces, Lena was separated from the group during the initial chaos. The attack had come from multiple directions, using tactics that suggested inside knowledge of their mission parameters. Communication systems were jammed, GPS signals were blocked, visual contact was lost in the heavy fog that had rolled in just before the ambush began. Command received scattered reports over the next few hours: explosions in the distance, brief radio chatter that cut off mid-sentence. Then, nothing but static. Drone surveillance detected no movement in the operational area. Thermal imaging showed several cold signatures that might have been bodies, but the weather conditions made positive identification impossible. At 4 a.m., after 8 hours of silence, the commanding officer made the decision that nobody wanted to make. Mission failed, all teams extract immediately. The assumption was that Bravo 2 team had been completely eliminated, 7 soldiers lost in action, including one logistics specialist who'd been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Lena Varga was officially listed as missing, presumed dead. But Lena had been in worse situations before, much worse. She'd learned patience during her time as a ghost unit operative, the kind of patience that comes from operating behind enemy lines for weeks at a time, with no support or extraction plan. She'd learned to remain calm when everything went wrong, to think clearly when others panicked, to find solutions when conventional options were exhausted. Most importantly, she'd learned that sometimes the mission doesn't end when command says it's over. Sometimes the mission ends when the last person standing decides it's finished, and Lena wasn't finished yet. While command was writing casualty reports and planning memorial services, Lena was moving through the mountains using skills that her current job description didn't include. She was hunting. I once talked to a former logistics veteran who said, "Some people don't go missing. They just haven't signaled yet." This story reminds me of that look in their eyes: calm, needing no explanation, just needing to complete the mission. At 6 a.m., 2 hours after the mission had been declared a failure, Command Station received their first anomaly. A drone conducting post-mission reconnaissance captured a blurry image, an enemy combatant's body with an extremely precise bullet wound directly between the eyes. The shot placement was too accurate to have been random, too clean to have come from the chaos of the initial ambush. Someone with professional training had made that kill. At 7 a.m., a second discovery. A piece of equipment wedged into a rock crevice that the drone's camera barely detected. When the recovery team finally reached the location, they found Bravo 2's tactical map, annotated with detailed markings showing enemy positions and movement patterns. The handwriting was precise, methodical, and matched the style used in logistics reports filed by Lena Varga. At 8:02 a.m., surveillance detected that an enemy jamming device had been manually disabled, not destroyed in combat, not damaged by explosives, but carefully taken apart by someone who understood its internal mechanisms. The device had been neutralized with surgical precision, using techniques that required advanced technical knowledge. At 9 a.m., a single encrypted SOS signal was transmitted on a frequency that hadn't been used by active units for years. The signal lasted exactly 30 seconds, then disappeared. The encryption signature was identified as G7H7. Intelligence officer Captain Martinez almost dropped his coffee when he saw the designation. Ghost 7. That call sign hasn't been used since 2016. The commanding officer, Colonel Hayes, stared at the report. Pull up Lena Varga's complete service record, not just the logistics file, everything. What they found changed everything they thought they knew about their missing logistics specialist. Lena had previously served with Ghost Unit 7, a classified reconnaissance team that had been disbanded after their cover was blown during operations in Syria. She was the sole survivor of an ambush that had killed 6 other specialists. After that mission, she'd refused all commendations, requested transfer to non-combat roles, and specifically asked that her Ghost Unit service be sealed from standard personnel files. Nobody had thought to check her classified background when she'd volunteered for logistic support. Nobody had imagined that she might still carry Ghost Unit equipment, or that she'd retained the skills that had made her one of the most effective reconnaissance operatives in the program. But now, every piece of evidence suggested the same impossible conclusion. Lena was not only alive, she was actively conducting solo operations against the enemy force that had ambushed her team. The discovery sent shock waves through the command structure. Colonel Hayes immediately ordered a halt to all casualty notifications pending further investigation. If Ghost 7 is operational, he told his staff, then this mission isn't over. It's just getting started. Additional surveillance was deployed, recovery teams were on standby, communication specialists began monitoring all frequencies that Ghost Unit had historically used. At 10 a.m., they intercepted a brief transmission that wasn't addressed to command, but rather seemed to be a field report being recorded for future reference. Day 1, post-ambush. 7 enemy casualties confirmed. Bravo 2 survivors located, but unable to extract due to hostile positioning, initiating individual target elimination protocol. The voice was barely recognizable, hoarse from dehydration, distorted by fatigue, but the calm professionalism was unmistakably Lena Varga. Captain Martinez looked at the transmission logs with growing amazement. She's not just surviving out there, she's conducting a one-person campaign against the entire enemy force. Intelligence analysis suggested that the separatist group responsible for the ambush consisted of approximately 25 combatants, heavily armed and operating from fortified positions. Under normal circumstances, a single soldier attempting to engage such a force would be considered suicide. But Ghost Unit operatives weren't normal soldiers. They were trained to operate independently in situations where conventional military tactics would fail. They specialized in asymmetric warfare, precision elimination, and completing objectives that seemed impossible. And according to the evidence accumulating throughout the morning, Lena was systematically dismantling the enemy force that had killed her teammates. At 11 a.m., Colonel Hayes made a decision that would have been unthinkable 12 hours earlier. We're going to provide support for Ghost Seven's operations. She's not abandoned out there. She's the tip of the spear. The mission status was quietly changed from failed to ongoing under classified parameters, because sometimes the most important battles are fought by people who refuse to accept that the war is over. And sometimes one person with the right training and the right motivation can accomplish what an entire team couldn't. Lena Varga was proving that point one precise shot at a time. I once reviewed black and white footage from teams left behind, and one thing that moved me was how someone could still maintain steady breathing and write on a rock, "I'm still here." When I read about the Ghost 7 signal, I don't think this is fiction. This is something someone out there is still doing, silently and steadfastly. At 11 a.m., the emergency command frequency crackled to life with a transmission that made everyone in the control room freeze. Ghost 7, target down. Repeat, target down, coordinates marked. The voice was female, hoarse from exhaustion, barely audible through static interference, but the professionalism was unmistakable, and the call sign confirmed what they'd begun to suspect. Lena Varga was not only alive, she was actively completing the mission that everyone else had assumed was impossible. Radar systems immediately confirmed the coordinates she transmitted. The location was the enemy's tactical command center, the primary objective of the original Bravo 2 mission. Sergeant Williams, monitoring communications, looked up from his console in disbelief. She took out their command post alone. Colonel Hayes ordered immediate deployment of a special response team to track and locate Ghost 7. Whatever Lena had accomplished, she needed extraction and medical attention. What the response team found when they reached the coordinates exceeded everyone's expectations. 3 enemy combatants lay dead around the command post, each eliminated with the precision that had become Ghost 7's signature. No evidence of chaotic fighting, no spray of bullets or explosions, just 3 clean kills executed with surgical accuracy. The enemy's communication equipment had been systematically destroyed, but not randomly. Someone with technical expertise had identified and disabled specific components that would prevent reinforcement calls, while leaving other systems intact for intelligence gathering. Bravo 2's medical supplies, previously presumed lost, were neatly organized in a first aid kit, marked with an anonymous tag. Someone had salvaged what could be used and prepared it for recovery. A climbing staff was found nearby with faint letters carved into the wood. Clara, survive no matter what. Clara had been Lena's younger sister, killed in the original Ghost Unit ambush 6 years earlier. The message was both a memorial and a promise. Near the makeshift memorial was a piece of blood-stained fabric with handwritten text. "Don't waste recovery resources. I marked the path, G7. Colonel Hayes, a grizzled veteran with 30 years of service, read the note with something approaching reverence. Lena never wanted credit for her work. She only acted when everyone else thought it was over. Following the markers Lena had left behind, the recovery team made an even more remarkable discovery. 5 members of Bravo 2 team were still alive. Lena had somehow located each survivor after the ambush, extracted them from the combat zone one by one, and hidden them in a cave system that provided natural protection from enemy search efforts. She treated their wounds using supplies salvaged from the battlefield. She'd rationed water and food to keep them alive. She'd maintained their morale during the hours when they had assumed they were going to die. And then, instead of staying with them where it was safe, she'd gone back out, into hostile territory to complete the mission they'd all been sent to accomplish. Sergeant Maya Chen, one of the rescued soldiers, was barely conscious when the recovery team found her, but her first words were about Lena. She told us to stay hidden until help arrived, said she had work to finish. Corporal Jackson, despite a severe leg wound, had been taking notes on everything Lena had done during the rescue operation. She moved like smoke, he reported, never made unnecessary noise, never wasted motion. But she talked to us the whole time, kept us calm, kept us focused on surviving. The most remarkable discovery was a detailed tactical assessment written on rocks near the cave entrance. Lena had documented the enemy's strengths, weaknesses, patrol patterns, and equipment specifications with the thoroughness of a professional intelligence analyst. She'd been conducting solo reconnaissance while simultaneously keeping 5 wounded soldiers alive and planning the assault that they'd all faced. Captain Martinez, reviewing the evidence, shook his head in amazement. This isn't just survival. This is a master class in single operative warfare. But Lena herself remained missing. The recovery team found tracks leading away from the cave system, heading deeper into the mountains. She departed after ensuring that her teammates were as safe as possible, leaving behind medical supplies and detailed instructions for their care. A final note, written on a piece of torn fabric, provided insight into her thinking. Mission objective achieved. Bravo 2 survivors located and secured. Recommend immediate extraction. Go 7, continuing individual operations until threat elimination is complete. Colonel Hayes realized that Lena wasn't planning to return with the rescue team. She was going to continue fighting until every enemy combatant in the area had been neutralized. She was conducting a one-person war. We need to find her, he told his staff. She's completed the mission, but she doesn't know when to stop fighting. Someone needs to tell her that it's over. But finding someone trained to remain invisible in hostile territory is nearly impossible, especially when that person doesn't want to be found. For the next 48 hours, Command tracked Ghost 7's activities through the evidence she left behind, eliminated sentries, disabled equipment, disrupted enemy supply lines. She was systematically dismantling the separatist force that had ambushed her team, working her way through their entire operational structure with methodical precision. It was both magnificent and terrifying to watch, because Lena Varga had become something that military strategists had theorized about, but never actually witnessed. A lone operative conducting successful campaign-level operations against a numerically superior enemy force. She transformed from a logistics specialist into a one-person army, and she was winning. But victory often comes at a cost that can't be measured in casualties or territory gained. Sometimes, the price of completing an impossible mission is becoming the kind of person who can't stop fighting, even when the fighting is over. Type mission continues. If you believe some warriors don't fight for glory or recognition, they fight because they're the only ones left who remember what they're protecting. 3 days after the successful extraction of Bravo 2 survivors, at exactly 5 a.m., when the base was just beginning morning operations, a lone figure walked through the main gate. She was thin from days without proper nutrition, her jacket torn and stained with mud and worse things. Her hair was still pulled back in the same tight bun she'd worn during deployment, but now it was matted with dirt and dried blood. Over her shoulder, she carried the Bravo 2 unit flag that had been captured during the initial ambush. She'd cut it down from the enemy command post and carried it back across 25 miles of hostile terrain. She wasn't carrying any weapons. She'd left them behind in the mountains, along with everything else that belonged to the mission that was finally completely over. The gate guard, barely awake and expecting nothing more than routine supply deliveries, almost didn't recognize her. "State your identification," he said automatically. Lena looked at him with eyes that had seen too much in too few days, but her voice was steady. "Ghost 7, returning unit colors to Bravo 2. The guard's face went pale as he realized who was standing in front of him. "Ma'am, you're alive." Lena simply nodded and walked past him toward the medical facility. She didn't speak to anyone else, didn't stop to explain what had happened, didn't acknowledge the stares and whispers that followed her across the base. She had one final task to complete, and then she could rest. In the medical facility, she placed the Bravo 2 flag on the reception desk and spoke to the duty nurse. 5 soldiers extracted from grid reference 847 North require follow-up medical care. Full debrief available upon request. Then she sat down in a waiting room chair and closed her eyes for the first time in 72 hours. When Colonel Hayes arrived 10 minutes later, Lena was asleep, sitting upright, still maintaining perfect military posture, even in unconsciousness. Word spread through the base within hours. Ghost 7 had returned. The mission was truly complete. Command approved Lena's request for honorable discharge with Special Intelligence Commendation, the first time such recognition had been granted in 8 years. But Lena didn't attend the ceremony. She'd already left the base. Medical officer reported that she'd received treatment for dehydration, exhaustion, and minor injuries, then quietly departed before dawn. No forwarding address, no contact information. She'd done what she came to do, bring her people home, and complete the mission. Everything else was just paperwork. The Bravo 2 survivors requested that the unit flag be displayed in the base memorial hall, along with a simple plaque, "Returned by Ghost 7. No one left behind." Staff Sergeant Williams, who'd monitored Ghost 7's communications during the operation, added his own tribute to the official record. "Some soldiers fight for medals, some fight for recognition. Ghost 7 fought because her people needed to come home." The mountains where Lena had conducted her solo campaign were declared off-limits to civilian traffic, not because they were still dangerous, but because they'd become a monument to what one person could accomplish when everyone else had given up. Intelligence estimates suggested that Lena had eliminated or disabled the entire 25-person separate cell during her 3-day operation. She'd done it alone, what a full company might have struggled to achieve. But she'd never claim credit for any of it, because for Lena Varga, completing the mission wasn't about personal achievement, it was about bringing people home. Subscribe if you believe the most important victories are won by people who fight not for glory, but for the simple promise that no one gets left behind. In the base archives, a young clerk discovered a hand-drawn map that had been submitted anonymously through internal mail. It detailed Lena's entire journey through the mountain operation, marking every significant terrain feature, water source, and tactical position. At the bottom of the map, written in precise handwriting, was a single line. "Nobody should be left behind, but if they are, leave them a way out. G7. The Bravo 2 unit was reformed and redeployed. Lena's tactics became required study material, taught under the designation Protocol G7, specialized training for units operating behind enemy lines. A new course was established called Individual Survival Operations, designed specifically for soldiers who might find themselves isolated from their teams in hostile territory. The first lesson was always the same. The mission doesn't end when communication fails. It ends when the last person stops fighting. Corporal Maya Chen, one of the soldiers Lena had rescued, was promoted to instructor for the program. She would tell new trainees, "I never saw her face clearly during the rescue, but I knew she believed that as long as one person was still alive, the mission wasn't finished." Lena never granted interviews, never appeared in military publications, never attended reunions or ceremonies. But everyone in the special operations community knew her story. In training facilities around the world, instructors would reference the Ghost 7 protocol when teaching advanced survival techniques. The phrase became shorthand for refusing to abandon teammates, continuing operations when others would surrender, and finding solutions when conventional options were exhausted. Young soldiers would ask their sergeants about the legend of the logistics specialist who fought an entire enemy force alone. The answers were always the same. Some people don't need titles or recognition. They just need to know that their people are safe. 5 years after the mountain operation, a memorial was quietly installed at the Ghost Unit training facility. It consisted of a simple stone marker with no names, no dates, no dramatic inscriptions, just 7 words. They believed someone was still worth saving. Veterans who visited the memorial understood the message. When everything goes wrong, when communication fails, when the mission seems impossible, there's always one more option: refuse to quit. Lena Varga had proven that one person, with the right training, the right motivation, and the right values, could accomplish things that seemed impossible. She'd shown that sometimes the most important battles are fought by people who never expect recognition for winning them. And she demonstrated that the greatest victory isn't defeating an enemy, it's bringing your people home. In the dead zones where communication fails and hope seems lost, soldiers still remember the lesson of Ghost 7. Keep fighting, keep moving, keep believing that someone is still worth saving, because as long as one person refuses to give up, the mission continues. Subscribe if you believe some heroes don't need titles. They just need one signal at the right moment. Leave a comment. And don't forget to subscribe to Iron Heart Stories. We tell the stories that should never be forgotten.